I'm Elizabeth at Literary Princess, and today I am starting a new series. So school is starting this week, and I thought it might be nice to tell you all a bit about the different classes I've taken over the course of my English Literature PhD and what I had to read during them. So in my program, we do 2 years of coursework, 2 classes per semester, 2 semesters per year. So that should be 8 courses. I actually did an extra year of coursework, so I have taken 10 courses. However, I am going to not do videos on 2 of them because they weren't literature-based courses, and that would be my practicum in teaching composition course and my women, gender, and health course, which I did for my feminist certificate, which is why I did my extra year of coursework. So I will be talking about 8 different courses over the course of 8 different videos. The first class that we will be talking about is Postcolonial Studies and the Non-Human Turn, Reanimating the Empire of the Human. I have my syllabus right here. Or to just shorten it to something more reasonable, animals in postcolonial literature. So I took this class in the fall of 2019, so it has been kind of a while, and I was looking over this syllabus and I was like, I don't remember that at all. So there's going to be a little bit of that going on, but I will do my best to tell you about the books, short stories, and probably not the secondary sources we read, like the critical works. I might mention a few of them, but mostly it's just going to be the fiction that I tell you about, as well as the assignments that I had to do. So let's jump in. We started off our reading with some selections from Rudyard Kipling, who was a Victorian author writing about India. He is most famously known for The Jungle Book. We read several stories from The Jungle Book, including Mowgli's Brothers, Tiger Tiger, Tamai of the Elephants, and I feel like we might have read Cause Hunting, but I don't actually remember. And the individual stories aren't listed on the syllabus. I think they were posted online for us, so I have no way of actually knowing. Oops, sorry. I had actually never read The Jungle Book before. I have watched a lot of film adaptations. Obviously, the Disney film from 1967, the animated one, not the recent live action one. But I had also seen a live action version with actual animals as a child. I don't remember the name of it because I think it was not The Jungle Book. It was called something else, but it was the story of The Jungle Book, and it had like real wolves and stuff. It was very interesting. But so that was my experience with The Jungle Books. So coming into this class, I actually got to read some of these stories, and they were quite fun. I liked the ones about Mowgli. Mowgli's Brothers and Tiger Tiger, I think, were the 2 that I really liked out of these ones. But we did not just read The Jungle Book from Rudyard Kipling. We also read some of his other short stories. And these are more adult stories, whereas The Jungle Book was written for children. So from these, we definitely read The Strange Rite of Morabie Jukes and The Mark of the Beast, which are very gothic. And I ended up doing a paper on them. I wrote my midterm paper on them and the kind of way that animals in these stories are used to signify humanness of the human characters, or their non-humanness if they somehow lose that, which in both The Mark and the Beast and The Strange Rite of Morabie Jukes, they do. So I was talking a lot about horses in both of those stories, and then I also included a 3rd story by Kipling, The Return of Imre, which features the same character as The Mark of the Beast, and that involves that character's dog, who I adore. I can't remember her name though. I've talked about this in an underrated Victorian literature video though, so you can go back and look and hear more about it there. Anyway, I really enjoyed these stories more than I did the ones from the Jungle Book. There are problems with them because this was written in the 19th century by a white guy in India. There's some racism. However, even though he's playing into the colonial idea, he is also critiquing it in a way. So it's very interesting to see those two kind of pieces pushing and pulling against each other, because he's critiquing it, but he's also just like completely in the middle of it. So I really enjoyed those. I was glad that I got to write a paper on it. I got an A- on the paper. This was my first literature class of my PhD. I'd been out of school for a few years and I was kind of shocked by how hard this was. Like, this was a really intense class to jump right into, but I'm really glad that I took it because I think it made me a better student overall and prepared me for the other classes that I would take. So the way that the professor set up this class was largely kind of chunking them by animal. And the first animal that we really looked at was the elephant. So we read Kipling's To My of the Elephants. And then we also read George Orwell's essay, Shooting an Elephant, and Lawrence Durrell's essay, From the Elephant's Back. I have read Shooting an Elephant multiple times before, and like, yeah, good essay, okay. Lawrence Durrell I was not familiar with. I honestly do not actually remember this essay that much, so I can't tell you much about it, but I did in fact read it. Next animals that we looked at were the insect and the parasite, and for this we read this super interesting book called The Calcutta Chromosome by Amitav Ghosh, and I'm probably going to be mispronouncing everybody's name in here, and I am so sorry for that, but it's been a few years since I heard them pronounced the way they were supposed to be pronounced in class. This book was so interesting. It's kind of sci-fi. It is dealing with these people who are studying the malaria parasite, and it's spread from mosquitoes to humans. And I don't even know how to describe it, really. You kind of just need to read it. It was very fascinating, kind of trippy at parts, and I really enjoyed reading it. I don't have my physical copy anymore. I think I gave it to another student, unfortunately, but this was a good book. I would definitely reread this one, and I would recommend it. It was very weird, nothing like anything I've ever read before. The next animal we looked at was the tiger, and for this we read The Man-Eater of Malgudi by R.K. Narayan? I'm sorry. So this is actually a bind-up of A Tiger for Malgudi and The Man-Eater of Malgudi. We only read The Man-Eater. So The Man-Eater of Malgudi follows Nataraj, who is a printer, and he's just like, the back calls him mild-mannered. That is like even an understatement. This man gets pushed around so much in this book. It was kind of frustrating. And he's being pushed around by this man called Vasu, who is a taxidermist and is an awful person. And like, there's a taxidermy tiger cub. It's like really, oof. And Vasu starts kind of wanting the temple elephant for his taxidermy. And the temple elephant is like a very important figure in this town. And so Nataraj has to stop him. I thought this was really good. I enjoyed it. I don't remember a whole lot of it aside from some really creepy parts with taxidermy. We talked a lot about taxidermy tigers in this section, and we looked at some actual images of them, and ugh, gives me the creeps, kind of, honestly. But I'm really glad that I read this. I want to go back and read A Tiger from Malgudi at some point, because that is actually from the perspective of a tiger. And one of the girls that was in class with me read it and said that it was very good. Also for the tiger, we read the short story The Last Tiger by Ruskin Bond. I actually really liked this story. It is about a tiger that just kind of avoids capture no matter what. I want to reread it. It's so upsetting because I should have just made these videos earlier, because I'm starting to forget stuff now. Like, this was in 2019. That was a while ago. A whole pandemic happened since then. So especially the short stories have kind of gone out of my head, but I do remember this being a really good story and liking it quite a bit. Next, we looked at the dog, and for this we read J.M. Coetzee's Disgrace. Coetzee is a South African author, and Disgrace takes place shortly after the end of apartheid, so in the 90s, and it is focused on a professor who is forced to leave his position at the university because he has an inappropriate relationship with a student. And he kind of goes out into the more remote part of the country to stay with his daughter, who runs a dog kennel. And a lot of stuff happens, but there is a lot of focus on dogs here. Now, this is the book that I did a presentation on. So at the beginning of the semester, we were told, okay, go look through the syllabus and pick the animal you want to present on. And I was like, dog. Yeah. Love dogs. Okay, this book sent me into a depressive spiral because there is so much dog death in this book. The professor ends up working at this clinic that is euthanizing dogs because there's too many dogs. It was really upsetting. And I had a really rough go with this. I thought that it is an amazing piece of literature. I would never reread it because it was so depressing to me. I ended up presenting this kind of essay that I wrote called Do Dogs Mean Something? And kind of going through how in this book, like, the meaning of dogs and the way dogs are viewed is entirely tied up with human views of them. So the humans feel that there are too many dogs, so they need to be euthanized. And just the different characters, the way that they interact with the dogs or don't interact with the dogs. And just also like this idea of why does every dog story have to be sad? Because this is sad, let me tell you. So I don't know if I really made a point with my presentation, but it was mainly just me being like, why? Why have you done this to me? Anyway, I think that the book was really important for me thinking about how animals are treated in the world, about my own relationship with dogs, about my family's relationship with dogs, but God, I would never read it again. Also, for the dog, read the short story Mrs. Plum by, and get ready to have me mispronounce things, Askia Mifalili. I'm gonna have a picture of the collection it's in, which is called In Corner B, and so you can see how it actually looks and not just go by my horrid mispronunciations. I honestly do not remember this story very much. I know that it also took place in South Africa, and it was focused on a woman named Mrs. Plum, and I think she had dogs. I don't think we talked about this very much because we all had a lot to say about Disgrace. So I remember reading it, but I don't remember anything about it. And the next kind of class was not actually on an animal. It was called Poets and Philosophers, and we looked at a lot of Derrida throughout this class. So for this we read The Animal That I Therefore Am. We also read for this another Coetzee piece called The Lives of Animals, which is actually an essay that is within his novel Elizabeth Costello. So it is framed as this speech that Elizabeth Costello gives on vegetarianism and the ethics of eating animals. So this, along with Disgrace, just had me like, I was debating going vegetarian. Literally the only reason I'm not vegetarian right now is because my husband would not be able to deal with it, and I'm not cooking 2 meals every day. So this gave me a lot to think about, and we had a pretty big discussion about this one because Elizabeth Costello, the character, compares the meat industry to the Holocaust, and we were discussing, like, is that okay? Is that accurate? Like, is that an acceptable comparison to make? So we had a lot to talk about with this one. The final piece that we read for this class was a short story by Devi Masweda from the collection Imaginary Maps, and this was Pterodactyl, Pirtha, and Puran Sahay. And all I remember about this one is a pterodactyl shows up out of nowhere. Yeah. I remember it being difficult to read, but very interesting. And it looks like we also did some secondary readings about extinction and a coming extinction, possibly, and all of that. Then we had to write our final paper, and I chose to write on the figure of the tiger in 2 early 20th century children's books. Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett and Winnie the Pooh by A.L. Milne, right? Nope, A.A. Milne. I was close. A.A. Milne. So what's really interesting about these is the tiger in A Little Princess is not alive. It is a tiger skin rug. There's actually 2 of them. And A Little Princess is a book that is very wrapped up in empire. Sarah Crewe, the main character, is of British descent but was born in India. Her father makes a fortune in diamond mines in India, and then that fortune seems to be lost when he dies. And then in Winnie the Pooh, of course, the Tigger is a stuffed animal. And so I remember I titled it Tigers in the Nursery, the figure of the tiger in early 20th century children's literature. And I was looking at how these representations of the tiger kind of display attitudes of imperialism in these works. So I don't, it's been a while since I read this, or it's been a while since I wrote this, so I don't remember all of the details, but Winnie the Pooh was actually extremely interesting to look at because you have all of these different animals in like the imaginary 100-acre wood, and like some of them are donkeys, like a bear, a pig, like kind of normal animals that you would see in England, and then you get Tigger, who's a tiger, and Kanga and Roo, who are kangaroos from Australia, so from these colonial countries. It was very fun. I had a really good time writing it. I think I got an A- on it as well. So that is what I read for my Animals in Postcolonial Literature class. I'm sorry that I didn't have more to say about some of them. They're very hazy in my mind at this point. I will definitely have more to say about other books in future videos. So the next video is going to be my Victorian Gothic literature class, so that will be fun, and I will have a lot to say about those because I remember them pretty well. So I hope this has been somewhat enjoyable. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you read any of these? What did you think? Did you take a post-colonial literature class at all? What did you read for it? It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.